We look at the post-spring transfer portal rankings at Ole Miss, and we talk about what's kind of going on in the media sphere around Ole Miss sports and why we avoid it to start with. Plus, Kara McCutcheon comes by today. Tom Vanderford is the Friday show. So this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Stick around.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis, at thestephenwillis.com, and thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube's. Do a favor and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you have already, tell a friend. If you haven't, please subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications when new videos go up, which happens quite frequently. And of course, upvote the video itself. It'd be terrific if we hit 1,000 subscribers on that YouTube channel before the Troy game. We will do what we're calling post-game live. It's going to be about a 30-minute show. We're going to have a chat module to make it completely interactive right here. High school coaches, Ole Miss legends, all those are going to stop by and tell you what's going about. Now, if it's 1 o'clock in the morning, it might just be me, but we're going to have fun. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to do this. But it'll be post-game live this season if we get to 1,000 subscribers. Also, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we got a lot of stuff that's just kind of fun with Ole Miss football. And one thing that I want to talk about today is kind of our post-spring transfer rankings. We're probably going to break this up over 2 parts, today and tomorrow. But I do think this is something worth talking about because we had expectations going into spring, and now how have those expectations changed? How are they different? How are they something other than what we were expecting? Now, this is the reason we follow sports. If we expect to be good, we're not as good. If we expect to be bad, we're better than we're. The expectations never is a straight line thing. You're never going to do exactly what the expectations are, and that's fine. That's why we follow sports. But probably in transfer rankings on the Ole Miss team, the number 1 transfer ranking right now is Zach Evans. Zach Evans is, I've told you for months, an Adrian Peterson level talent playing college football. He has a chance to really go off and be special. I do not expect him to have a high workload. Understand that. I think that's part of the reason he chose Ole Miss. People saying that Zach Evans can take 20 to 25 carries. He can. I don't think that's going to be on the menu for him because of the way we do things. And I think that was part of his recruiting pitch because the tread off of running backs go off so fast, especially at the next level. You want to conserve those hits as much as you can. And he has through 2 years. He hasn't ran the ball that much at all. So we'll see. Now, could it be a situation to where I'm completely wrong there? Absolutely. Lane Kiffin gave the ball to Derrick Henry like 45 times a game his last 4 games at Alabama. So all of this is subject to change. But Zach Evans has the hands. He has the blocking ability. He has the balance, the vision. He is the most talented running back Ole Miss has ever had on campus. I will say that again for people that are at home, sleeping, missed it, however you go. He is the most talented running back to ever sign with the University of Mississippi. Now, I'm not saying he's the best. He's got a ways to go to catch Deuce. He needs a big year because I do think he'll be here 1 year. Now, remember with Lane Kiffin, that's the one thing that people are going to struggle with that have been thinking about a program as a program for years and years, decades. This is more of a team-to-team type situation now. This is the 2022 team. They're going to turn over coaches and players, and then there's going to be a 2023 team. And then there's going to turn over coaches and players, and there's going to be a 2024 team. Now, first of all, that gives Lane Kiffin job security because there's going to be a massive turnover if he leaves. So if there's any continuity there, he's probably going to be safe if you want to keep it. But it's a different way to do this. Ole Miss does this not because they want to do this. Ole Miss does the transfer portal because they have to do this. They're not a traditional recruiter like Alabama or Georgia, who are now complaining about all the NIL and stuff coming in because they're not as dominant in that realm. The NIL is not going to be completely dominant because of the traditional recruiters. So they're kind of going off of each other right now. The third option is the transfer portal. And right now, USC and Ole Miss has hit this very hard. Now, part of that is this year we had 32 initials. And because we had 32 initials, we could extend the transfer portal. It might not be. I want to see what goes on. I want to see how it looks going into the fall. But, I mean, they may sign 9 players, 10 players on signing day in December. Then they may sign 9 or 10 players in the transfer portal before February. And then they'll cherry pick from everybody else. But Zach Evans is one of those guys, a big guy, big time player. He has a chance to run for 1,700 yards, I think, at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is going to run the ball probably this year 65% of the time. It's going to look like FAU did with Darryl Singletary. And if you understand that and know what's going on and you realize how much pressure that takes off the quarterback, that allows them to grow. That allows that quarterback competition to kind of work itself out because you can count on that. You can count on what's going on because he is so uber talented. He is also going to affect people. Now, Ole Miss runs an RPO system. Most everything in this offense happens between the hashes. Conflict players are going to be near the line of scrimmage. He is going to cause people to step forward first, always, which is going to open it up for our number 2 ranking in the post-spring transfer portal, and that is Michael Trigg. Michael Trigg is a guy that as spring practice went on, Lane Kiffin started talking about he was a high school player playing with junior high kids. He was a super athlete there. He said there's not many athletes like him in the world. I mean, this is pretty hefty praise from Lane Kiffin, and he's not a guy that BS's around. Anybody that tries to decode Lane Kiffin, there is just folly because he tells you exactly what he's thinking. If he doesn't want you to know about it, he's not going to talk about it at all. If it's something completely worthless and throwaway that people need to get him talking, we're going to talk about this a little bit in the next segment, then it's not really relevant to what's going on. It's not really the meat of the story. You're just trying to find something interesting that he will talk about. So understand that when Lane Kiffin says he's a special athlete and there's not many people like him in the world and he's like a high school player with junior high kids, it's because he's showing out. And he is going to be the best friend of Luke Altmyer or Jaxson Dart, whoever wins that job. Absolutely. Going to be the best friend of those guys. And I'm here for it. I really am. Ole Miss with a tight end is better than Ole Miss without a tight end. 2020 Ole Miss offense was more explosive than 2019 or 2021. It just was. What's the difference? The difference was Kenny Yeboah. And Michael Trigg is, talent-wise, a couple of steps above Kenny Yeboah. The problem is Michael Trigg will be a freshman or a sophomore. I don't know exactly where he fits, but he'll be a freshman or a sophomore coming in. And they will use him. And you can see on these RPOs the way it's positioned. When I talk about Zach Evans being important, let's just say I love to pick on Henry To'oTo'o. I know that. I get that. But let's take him. He loves covering run. That's going to be his first choice, and that's what he's going to be able to do. So it's going to be imperative on the quarterback to look exactly the same whenever he hands off and when he pulls it. Okay, it needs to look exactly the same. But if he does, with Zach Evans in the backfield, you have guaranteed him taking a step towards the line of scrimmage first, and Michael Trigg going behind him. Every time. It's an unstoppable play. That's how Florida almost beat Alabama last year. And Dan Mullen ended up getting fired. But that's why. Because those running backs having to come up and deal with the run and expecting the run and not even thinking about the pass, that opened up stuff right behind them. And they were using that. They use that quite frequently. And Michael Trigg can be that guy for Luke Altmyer or Jaxson Dart, whoever wins that job. Now, before I get out of here on this segment, I do want to say I do expect Jaxson Dart to win the job. Okay? That's what I'm thinking is going to happen. He is not in the lead right now. But Jaxson Dart would be the number 3 transfer on our list. Whenever things go well, and you saw that even in the spring game when he was 7 of 27, but when things went well, it looked really smooth. It looked really high level. And people need to be knowledgeable of that. That's called flashing. So whenever somebody says, oh, he flashed, that's what they mean. He had a little bit of trouble with the deep ball. He tried too many deep balls. Throwing the ball downfield every time. He can't do that. If he can just play football, let the offense breathe, it will be fine, especially with Zach Evans, Michael Trigg, like we just mentioned, and then Jaxson Dart, the signal caller. For Ole Miss probably to be its best version of itself, Jaxson Dart really needs the light to come on during the summer. For Ole Miss to be good, Luke Altmyer can be in there. For Ole Miss to be bad, Jaxson Dart's in there, and the light did not come on. That's how that works. Anyway, our partners at BetOnline continue the number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. Find all of the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, to esports and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. I think Ole Miss is a 33-1 odds to win the SEC this year. So that's pretty, there's Heisman stuff, there's futures. Go in there and give it a look what's going on. But anyway, that's BetOnline. That's where the game starts. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Make sure to go check out Locked On NBA Big Board. Host Raphael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and author of the NBA Big Board newsletter is joined by Richard Strayman, Sam Ferris, and Leif Tholen, giving fans an in-depth look at NBA Draft, mock draft, player rankings, and of course, big boards. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Okay, in the first segment, we talked all about how Zach Evans was the number 1 player post-spring that transferred in, and second was probably Michael Trigg. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the quarterback competition, because Jaxson Dart would be number 3 on that list. And because of that, that competition becomes relevant. So we all saw how that spring game looked, and honestly, it looked like Jaxson Dart was pressing. But if you look at it, and we talked about it before, when things went really well for Jaxson Dart, it looked really smooth. And my opinion is, like, if for Ole Miss to reach its best version of itself, Jaxson Dart needs to be hitting on all signals, all cylinders. Luke Altmyer for the middle, for Ole Miss to be good, he needs to be the guy. Has a lower ceiling, has a higher floor. For Ole Miss to be bad, Jaxson Dart probably needs to come in and perform poorly. That's where it stands. It's like a sandwich of Jaxson Dart and Jaxson Dart with the middle Luke Altmyer. So the question becomes, in this quarterback competition, where's that floor for Jaxson Dart going to be? Just looking things over and over again. Now, a lot of that might be whenever the lights come on, he might perform completely different when the lights are on. He might be a reverse Michael Spurlock. So you don't want to discount what's going to happen, because there are going to be people in this fan base, and we saw this with Matt Corral and John Rice Plumlee, that have made a decision and will fight for that decision all the way until the end, which is absolutely silly, but they do that. So you will see people that, even if Luke Altmyer is actually decent in the fall and he wins the job, people are going to say, why isn't Jaxson Dart in the game? Why isn't he playing? He has all of this stuff, and people have built him up as this swag player, because we are in the era right now of sports to where swag matters more than talent. It's not what you can do, it's how you can look while you're doing it. Now, I'm not saying anything's wrong with that necessarily, but there has to be a proof in the pudding type moment. Lane Kiffin's not going to go out there and deal with turnovers over and over again. So it's going to be on Jaxson Dart to come in and learn the system and just play quarterback. His whole thing is don't do too much. You do not have to. With Michael Trigg and Zach Evans right there, you have plenty of time to get you to where you need to be. And honestly, 2022 might not be his year. But you have weapons around you that it can make you quite effective. It's almost like when Greg McElroy was the quarterback at Alabama. Or, what's his name? A.J. McCarron was the quarterback at Alabama. You just need to function. Need to not lose the game. And that's going to be very important because you have weapons all around you. Now, everybody's going to point out the wide receiver position and potentially Deion Smith. And we talked about Jalen Robinson and Malik Heath, and all of them are coming in. Outside the hash marks, most of this offense doesn't exist. That exists for Lane Kiffin shot plays. I've said this from the beginning. 10% of the offense is going to be Lane Kiffin shot plays. They try to come up against a certain defense. It's a double move, and all of a sudden the guy's running wide open. Lane Kiffin is a genius at this type stuff, of knowing how to put this in and how to defeat a defense. He brought in Charlie Weiss Jr., who has a photographic memory, to know exactly what they're doing. Think of it as an instant all-22 film recall. So those shot plays can be even more effective. But in between there, it's going to be 80-90% of this Baylor stuff running super fast. They're going to run high tempo. They're going to run the ball a ton, which they have to do because of that. There's going to be a lot of, hey, we're going to run outside zone left. Now, okay, let's switch it outside zone right and then inside zone. That's what it's going to look like. The offense is going to look real similar to what it did last year. Last year was not a Matt Corral special thing. If you look at Baylor quarterbacks over the years, and this is in no way a shot at Matt Corral. Do not hear that. But RG3 is the one that made it in the league for any period of time. The other quarterbacks you didn't really hear about. They were good quarterbacks. Baylor's a good team. I think the 2015 team that almost went to a bowl game, or almost went to the playoffs, was a quarterback. I don't even know his name. If anybody knows his name, put it in the comments below. Help me out. But it's not necessarily a system thing, but it's kind of a system thing. But we're going to try and find high-level quarterbacks, which we've done, to run this system thing. Brian Robeson told us before Lane Kiffin even got here, the one thing a quarterback cannot do in Lane Kiffin's offense is turn the ball over. It's just the way it's going to be. Don't turn the ball over. So Jaxson Dart has to learn to play within himself. Play within the offense. Not do too much. Not try to force stuff in. Not try to play gunslinger Brett Favre out there. Just do what Luke Altmyer does. Because honestly, if he just did exactly what Luke Altmyer does, Jaxson Dart has more tools to do them. He'll win the job right there. And the offense would open up over time. But the number 3 of the ranking would obviously, transfer ranking, would be Jaxson Dart, even though the spring game that we all saw went fairly bad. So imagine dipping your finger into that plastic tub of birthday cake frosting, then opening your eyes and realizing it was only 150 calories and 16 grams of protein. That's what it's like to eat a birthday cake puff from Built. I just received my birthday cake puffs, and I've never had anything like it before. They're available right now, and I can't promise that they'll be here tomorrow, so go get them today at Built.com. And if you haven't tried the puffs, let me let you in on a little secret, because that's what friends do. A chocolate-covered marshmallow protein bar. Yeah, you heard me. Delicious flavored marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. Make everything your birthday. Every day your birthday with Built birthday cake puffs. Built has taken the delicious experience of biting into that fresh slice of your birthday cake and robed it in 100% white chocolate and added sprinkles. So, go to Built.com and get your birthday cake puffs now. It's Built.com. Use promo code LOCK15, all one word, and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including iTunes. So don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes. Give us a 5-star review. You can say whatever you want to say. Just give us a 5-star review. You can say Steve talks too much. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Whoa, why is he talking about this? All of that, just leave a 5-star review available for us. So we'd appreciate that very much. So anyway, Kara McCutcheon could not join us this week because of work-related commitments. We'll get back to her at some point. But today, it just came out. So yesterday, the NCAA released that they're doing away with divisions and doing away with initial scholarships. So I wanted to talk a little bit about initial scholarships. Now, Lane Kiffin has done a fantastic job of the overhaul of this roster talent in 1 year. We have gone from somewhere around 17 blue chip players to about 34. And that is because they bumped the initials up to 32 this year from the normal 25, which kind of made it to where we could do whatever we want to. Now, this is a situation to where Lane Kiffin has been operating with restrictions. This initial thing that they expanded 32, it was still a restriction. Ole Miss has done unbelievably well, and just about everybody they've gone after and really fought after, they've gotten that guy. They've turned truly dominant in the transfer portal. This is going to be their identity. Now, listen to this. There are 3 ways to build your roster in college football right now. There is the traditional recruiters. Those would be the Alabama, the Georgias, the Oklahomas, the Clemsons. Those guys are considered traditional recruiters. Now, you also have the NIL group, which would be the Texas A&M, Texas, Miami, Tennessee, USC. Those guys would be NIL schools, Oregon. Now, and you also have the transfer portal, which USC and Ole Miss is kind of leading at the moment. So, you can see how taking away initials, this means that people can, let's back this up for a second. It's based off of your 85 scholarship limit. That's the only limit you have. You can sign as many players as you want to in a year. You just can't go over that 85 limit. So, as with NIL, as with everything else, let's look at how people take advantage of this. And people really do something to make this advantageous for them. And that is through processing. You will see that much, much more now. You will see players entering the portal, going down to the G5 level, to the FCS level, all of that because of processing, because somebody needs to make room in that 85. The high-pressure world that is about to happen on the 85 should not be overstated by anybody. It is going to be real. If you do not perform, you're out the door. It is going to be a zero tolerance thing. Players are going to be able to go on their own. The coaches are just going to automatically cut them loose and find somebody else to come in. It's going to be a 1-year thing, which I told you about Lane Kiffin. He builds teams, not programs. This is going to be the 2022 team. It's not going to be the Ole Miss program. There's not going to be any real carryover between players. So, the one thing that has hamstrung Ole Miss on this transfer portal issue is the fact that they can only sign 25 a year, or this year 32. And you didn't really know how these players counted, and nobody really knew the count. And they did that on purpose so they could play in the transfer portal, do whatever they need to do. They need to make sure that other schools do not know they're full, because that will affect things. People are going to negative recruit in transfer portal just like they do in recruiting. It just is what it is. So, you take away those initials to where Lane Kiffin can sign as many under the 85 as possible. That means, right now, let's say Ole Miss is at the 85 right now. Ole Miss can go in and process their 5 worst players and go into the transfer portal and sign. Might be outside of the SEC because of the time of year, but that's where you can sign those players. And this is going to happen pretty much everywhere. NIL schools are going to sign 30 players in a year if they can put together a Texas A&M class, $31 million. Their NIL class is going to be huge with high school recruits. Them doing that is because the cutthroat makes second chances on those rosters more attainable. Remember, in recruiting, I've told you this for a month. It is important to finish in the top 2 in high school recruiting now. It is not important to win. The number one thing we're doing is the transfer portal. We are trying to win through the transfer portal. We're not trying to be a traditional recruiter. We're not trying to be an NIL monster because really we can't. So we're doing what we have to do to be elite. But there is a road. There is a path for Ole Miss to be elite right now. There is a way to do this. Like I said, we've gone from 17 players to 34 that are blue chips in 1 year. And now for 2 years, you're going to remove those limits. It's going to allow Lane Kiffin to really do some work in the transfer portal. I'm looking forward to it. I think January will be a lot of fun whenever you do transfer portal season. I think they might only sign 6 or 7 players that are high school players and just transfer portal the heck out of it. They know what they have to do. They have an NFL-style player personnel office, and because of that, they should be able to do whatever they need to do. It's going to be really fun. And remember, also, we recorded it last night, live streamed it. SEC After Dark is available on YouTube. You can check that out. We're going to talk about scheduling a little bit. We're going to talk about this scholarship limit thing. We're going to talk about that from a serious SEC perspective. You can catch Corey Burton from Believe in Georgia Dogs, Jake Thomas from Tie Talk Podcast, Jeff Beecham will be there, and we'll just go back and forth of what's going on from different schools. You have NIL, you have traditional recruiters, and you have the transfer portal in one show. And I talk a whole bunch on that show. So if you're sick of my voice, that might be a little bit of a problem. So I did wanted to come on here since Kara couldn't come on here and tell you about that thing and why this will be advantageous for Ole Miss. This is a good thing for Ole Miss. Now, for years, the traditional recruiters basically had it pigeonholed where this is all they could do and nobody could break them up. Because since 2014, they've been recruiting to the playoffs. So those same 6 teams are recruiting elite players, and they can get them because they can recruit to the playoff. And that was the only way in, and there was nobody else there. Then NIL got legalized. So some of those kids get pulled away from the NIL guys. So Alabama's class will be less, and so will Texas A&M than what Alabama was originally getting. So it'll be interesting to see that. Anyway, I will catch you tomorrow. Thank you very much for tuning in. This has been the Locked On SEC Podcast. Thanks for making the Locked On SEC Podcast your first listen every day. Tomorrow we'll continue to talk about this a little bit. Now make your second listen Locked On SEC. To get all your daily SEC news in less than 30 minutes from SEC expert Chris Gordy. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Anyway, thank you very much. I will catch you tomorrow. Peace.